Hello, welcome to another development diary. Hopefully this one will be a little more upbeat than the last one. It's interesting though, because in the last one I felt like I didn't know what I was doing and I didn't feel like maybe this development diary thing was a good idea, but I think it actually restored my faith in the idea of doing developer diaries, because while my advice on game development and thoughts and struggles specific to that may not be as interesting, at least I have personal struggles. Well, I wouldn't say at least, but I do have personal struggles which may be interesting to share. Hopefully, I think people might identify with them and say, oh, maybe, I don't have it exactly the same as he does, but maybe that's similar to my experiences in a lot of ways, because I think everyone struggles. I think there's a lot of struggling in life, and so hopefully I can help people through that. But what I wanted to talk about is so you're starting a new game. I started a new game, and the difficulty, I think, is you have to say, well, what are my ideas? Where are they coming from? And certainly the most common idea is to draw on other games. But I think you have to be careful when drawing on other games for references, because I think you have to figure out exactly what it is you like about the game and exactly what you want to draw from. So, for example, let's take a look at Ratchet and Clank. I was very fortunate to work on the Ratchet and Clank games for the PlayStation Portable, but before that I was a fan of the games. And so, interestingly, I guess someone else who was a fan of the games made this other game called Rough Trigger, The Vancouver Conspiracy or something like that, and basically exactly the same as Ratchet and Clank. They're trying to basically clone the game, and I guess it didn't turn out very well. But when I was at Heavy Iron, before I worked on Ratchet and Clank, I worked on The Incredibles. That was my first professional game project, and everyone on the team was really a fan of Ratchet and Clank, and we wanted to draw on that for inspiration, make our game like that. But if you play The Incredibles, it's nothing like Ratchet and Clank, because I think we were making a different type of game, but it wasn't exactly the game we thought we were making or the game we wanted to make, or at least, at the very least, Ratchet and Clank was sort of incompatible with The Incredibles, because The Incredibles at its core is sort of a brawler action platformer about punching, and that's something specific to the IP we're working with. But Ratchet and Clank, I think its strongest suit is the crazy weapons and the shooting and the crazy gizmos and gadgets, which is not something we had in The Incredibles. So I think it's important to recognize what you're taking from your inspirations and figure out what works for your game and what doesn't. But I think it's also important to recognize the core of the game and what makes that game so special, because if we had some platforming action in The Incredibles, but if we had just taken the platforming moves, the dump, jump, double jump, that sort of things from Ratchet and Clank and put it in The Incredibles, I don't think it would have been, as good as as good as Ratchet and Clank. So I think it's tough drawing on inspiration for other games, and I think you have to put a lot of thought into it, because oftentimes you're saying it's like blank, but it's different. And hopefully you're setting out to make something different. Hopefully you're trying to expand the space of games and make something new and personal and fresh and put your own self in that product. But you have to figure out what it is you're adding and how compatible that is with the games you're drawing on for reference. So I think it's important, and when we were doing Retrograde, obviously we drew on a lot of rhythm games and Guitar Hero and stuff, and also side-scrolling shooters, but I think it was kind of easy because I felt so self-assured. I felt like I knew what I was doing. I had all these years of experience. I was the lead programmer on the Ratchet and Clank PSP, whatever, you know. But it it it's a lot tougher now that I don't have that sort of self-assured confidence. I have to, I worry that, hey, maybe I'm missing the mark, maybe we can't do something along these lines, maybe we just don't have the skills, or maybe, we can't capture that magic that this other game had.